Hi, my name is John Platero, and I'm the CEO of the National Council for Certified Personal Trainers. And I'm here to talk to you about the Curtsy lunge. Now, this is an exercise I had never seen before until recently, and I've been exercising for many decades. Why do we exercise? Well, most of the time it's to keep us healthy, give us more energy and stamina, decrease our stress, and prevent injury. However, there are people who exercise for performance goals, and most often these people are athletes. Not to take away from the person who wants to get out of a wheelchair or out of bed, which is also a performance goal, but usually it's someone who wants to run a marathon, a triathlon, or some kind of sport. Now, performance goals often involve activities that are dangerous or actually unhealthy. For example, boxing is probably not a healthy activity. It involves blows to the head and the body. But hey, people do it. So consequently, they have to train for it. Now, when training for anything, you, the trainer, must always keep this concept in mind. Muscles are slaves to joints. If the joint is injured or damaged, it won't matter how many muscles are pulling on it. It's going to cause pain, or it's just not going to move. Therefore, when choosing exercises, it's important to evaluate risk versus benefit. Now, a boxer has to be able to take a punch, right? Would it be a good exercise to have them repeatedly slam their head against the wall? Probably not. It's probably better to have them, wear headgear, and in their normal sparring routines, they'll get hit. Now, this is an extreme example, but I hope you get my point. And there are also motions a body or our bodies can perform, but we don't need to train them. For example, your fingers can rotate, but we don't train this motion. Okay? So keep those in mind. So now back to risk and benefit. When evaluating an exercise, first look at the goal, but you got to relate it to the joints and the muscles involved. In a lunge, there are three main joints involved: the hip, the knee, and the ankle. The spine and the toes are there too, but the primary joints affected are the three I just mentioned. And the muscles that create ascension and descension, which is what occurs in a lunge, it's a primal movement pattern, are primarily the gluteus maximus, the quadriceps, and the triceps surae, which is the gastrocnemius and the soleus. Are the other glutes and hamstrings in there? Yes. Are the peroneals, the tibialis anterior, and the other muscles of the lower leg in there as well? Yes. But the prime movers I just mentioned are what's really moving these joints. But we're getting ahead of ourselves because muscles are slaves to joints. So we need to consider the joints first. Now, the hip, it's a ball and socket with the range of motion totally capable of performing a lunge. It has 3 degrees of motion, and the ankle is comprised of a few joints with multiple ranges of motion, so as long as the ankle stays in subtalar neutral, we're fine. But the knee, well, the knee is the dumb joint. It only has really 1 degree of motion, and that's sagittal plane motion. It's basically a hinge. Now, this is where the curtsy lunge risk outweighs the benefit. So where does this curtsy lunge come from? Well, it comes from the word courtesy. It actually is the courtesy lunge. People would curtsy to be polite or honor a person, primarily royalty. The range of motion is small, and you might only curtsy a few times. You're not curtsying all the way down to 90 degrees. And I doubt that when they designed the curtsy lunge, the thought of doing multiple sets and reps with a lot of weight on your back was not part of the design. So let's look at it. So as you can see, when I curtsy, the hip, the knee, and the ankle are involved just like any other lunge, so the benefits are similar. What's different is that the knee, the hinge joint, the dumb joint, is twisted. Now, here's where some knowledge of injury prevention comes into play. The ACL, or the anterior cruciate ligament, is commonly torn or ruptured and almost 8 times more prevalent in females. I wonder why. Well, there's a thing called the Q angle or quadriceps angle, and that's formed by the superior iliac spine, the ASIS, the longitudinal axis through the femur to the pull of the patella tendon, and the mechanical axis of the hip. So you have the hip over the knee, over the patella, but you have the quadriceps coming at an angle. And you can see this in the graphic. However, most females have wider hips, which increases the Q angle, which is called genuvalgum or knock knees. So why does this contribute to females rupturing or tearing their ACL? Well, the ACL usually gets damaged or ruptured when someone gets hit from the outside of the knee, or they plant and they pivot or rotate on the knee, and the knee caves in or adducts. So now that you've seen what a Q angle is and what an excessive Q angle is and how the knee might have a tendency to cave in when someone has wider hips, you can understand why the curtsy lunge has a much greater risk for the same benefit that you could get from a normal lunge. So remember the law of facilitation. When an impulse has passed through a certain set of neurons to the exclusion of others, it will tend to take the same course on a future occasion, and each time it traverses this path, the resistance will be less. So basically, the more you do an activity, the easier it is to do it. So the more you cave in this knee, the more it's going to want to cave in. So why would you teach or train someone to tear their ACL? Why? In my opinion, if you want a curtsy, just save it for when the king comes by and do it then. Otherwise, just do a normal lunge. Hope that helps.